First of all, I want to tell you how honored I am to be here on behalf of the United Church of Canada at this multi-faith gathering in the Hindu Heritage Centre. I celebrate this opportunity to learn more about the Hindu faith and the excellent work you do, but also to join with you in offering prayers of peace, justice, and reconciliation for the troubled world that we live in right now. As I thought about today, I couldn't help thinking how particularly relevant and how worthwhile is the topic for today, unity in diversity. Just last Saturday, we were all shocked by the terrorist massacre in Kenya when gunmen stormed into a crowded mall in Nairobi and shot dead some 67 people and wounded 175 more. Parents hurled themselves over their children, people jumped into ventilation shafts to save themselves, and shoppers huddled behind the plastic mannequins of designer clothing stores as two squads of Shabab gunmen, Somali's Al-Qaeda wannabe affiliate, moved through the mall, shooting shoppers in the head. Hours later, the mall's gleaming floors were smeared with blood as police officers dashed through the corpse-strewn corridors, trying to find the assailants. The standoff with heavily armed attackers holding hostages went on for 4 days. Now, at the same time, last Saturday was also the annual United Nations International Day of Peace. In the words of UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, on this International Day of Peace, let us pledge to teach our children the value of tolerance and mutual respect. Let us invest in the schools and teachers that will build a fair and inclusive world that embraces diversity. Let us fight for peace and defend it with all our might. And so I thought that today I should focus my thoughts on building that fair and inclusive world that embraces diversity, that of mending the world. The image of mending the world takes me back to childhood memories. I remember my mother sitting mending our clothes in the evening. We children did wear the knees and elbows through a lot of clothes. In fact, mending would probably feel like an essentially feminine activity for me, were it not for my uncle, who was a medical missionary in China. When Uncle Arnold visited us for Sunday lunch, he used to tell me, I sew people up. He'd been a doctor both in wartime and in peacetime, and in the course of his life, he did sew a lot of people up. I learned early lessons about mending the world. From my mother, I learned that it's important to choose the right threads when you're mending, threads strong enough for the cloth being mended. I learned that a stitch in time saves 9, that a tear, if left unattended, may become quite impossible to mend if left too long, that mending is an ordinary, everyday activity. From my missionary uncle, I learned that mending is often a matter of life and death, that there is a mending which takes place both from the inside and from the outside, that after a deep wound, there will be a scar. But mending is far more than just putting a patch on things, covering over what's come apart. Mending is essentially an activity of restoring, so that, my mother used to say, it looks almost like new. Yet I believe that the process of mending is part of the fabric of life. It's what makes it possible for us to say there is a fabric of life. For without it, our lives would be threadbare, full of holes, coming apart at the seams, and quite unsatisfactory. With last weekend's terror in Kenya and the still present threat that the Americans might bomb Syria, we are well aware of the tearing apart of the very fabric of our world. And this awareness we have is ours, but it is also international. In fact, civilizational. We talk glibly about our global village, but we are becoming increasingly a single organism. The basic message that we hear from all sources of truth is that we are all one. And that is a message the human race has largely ignored. when Canada fails to address the harmful carbon pollution from its rapidly growing tar sands industry, we forget that our world is a single organism. Because nobody wins in a world of terror and warfare. And unless we take the time to look at the cause of what's happened, we will not stop the cycle of violence and hatred. Instead, we will live forever in fear of retribution from others in the global community who feel aggrieved, because the violence inflicted in brutal acts goes totally against a loving purpose for our lives. Human beings, everyone, all are valued and not to be destroyed. And when one part of the body suffers, the whole body suffers. So in today's world, we can choose to escalate the spiral of violence, to trade a stone for a pistol for a machine gun for a bomb for a nuclear warhead, or we can choose to break out of the spiral of violence. So what are we doing now at the end of September 2013? What will we choose to do? Are there some things that are beyond repair? For the mending of the world involves repairs in a number of different places. It involves mending our relationships with others, and not just with each other privately, but also between groups of people, factions within our faith communities, within our city, as well as among nations. And alongside of all that, a mending of the world involves a mending within each individual person and between each other. Our participation in this multi-faith forum helps to deepen our relationship with one another. We can participate in this process of mending the world, or we can hide from it. We can weave threads of grace in the broken places of this world, or we can pour steel and concrete over all our emptiness. We can weave subtle thoughts of peace and love into the conversations of the world, or we can abandon all responsibility. We can breathe blessings, delicate strands of love and poetry into the air, or we can stand and hold our breath until nuclear missiles thread their course in the skies and drop their curse upon the earth, leaving nothing to mend. If we are to mend the world, we must find the thread that ties us to each other. Hopefully, we will thread our lives together in mending the world. So let's work together to help mend what is torn, because together we can knit something new as we celebrate our unity in diversity. Thank you.